The classroom was quiet. Bright lights hummed softly above. Rows of students sat still, eyes forward, waiting. The room wasn't normal. It floated in space, inside the Intergalactic Peace Academy, the most respected university in the galaxy. Species from dozens of planets studied there. Young minds came to learn about war, peace, and history. It was built after the human expansion era, when Earth had risen to power. Now Earth taught others how to avoid the same mistakes at the front. Of the room stood Professor Alira Voss. She was human, tall, calm, and known for her strict voice and sharp mind. She pressed a button, and a glowing hologram appeared behind her. "Today," she began, "we study one of the greatest battles in history, the Battle of Iran 7. Some students nodded. Others opened their datapads. The hologram showed starships, strategy maps, and tactical symbols. But in the back row, one student didn't move. His name was Zern Val, and he wasn't like the others. He wasn't taking notes. He wasn't even breathing steady. His four-fingered hands were tight in his lap. His eyes, black and wide, stared at the map glowing on the screen. Iran-7. That name didn't mean history. To him, it meant home. Iran 7 was a turning point. It proved Earth's strength. It taught the galaxy that resistance to peace was dangerous. Zarin blinked. He was no longer in the classroom. He was a child again. The sky above his village was soft and blue. His little sister ran through the golden grass. Their mother smiled while carrying fruit back from the trees. His father was building a small wind tower. Life was simple, kind, safe. Then the sky turned red. Then the ships came. Elira continued. The enemy at Aeron 7 refused to join the Galactic Peace Code, so Earth, leading the Alliance fleet, moved in. Their goal was swift surrender. To stop the violence before it could grow, Zeron's fists tightened. That wasn't the truth. That was a lie. His people had no weapons, no army, no warships. They only asked to stay neutral. They only wanted to live. He remembered the sound of bombs, the way the ground shook, his mother's scream, the fire, the black smoke, the heat. His entire planet burned. Not because of a war, because Earth called it one. Elira clicked again. New image floated. In the air, a famous human commander standing in front of Earth's flag. Commander Juno led the charge, she said proudly. Her tactics at Iron 7 are still studied by cadets today. Zaron looked around. No one else seemed angry. No, one else felt sick. They all stared at the glowing images like it was some kind of game. He couldn't breathe. Elira went on. The people of Iron 7 resisted surrender, but Earth gave them a choice. When they refused, Earth responded with clean, and necessary. Zarin stood up. His chair made a sharp noise. Everyone turned. Even Elira paused. Mr. Val, she asked. Zer's voice was low, but steady. That's not what happened. Few students glanced at each other. Lyra raised an eyebrow. Excuse me, Zarin? Took a step forward. I was there. You're in 7. I'm from there. You just said dit's wrong. A silence fell over the room. Elira frowned. You must be mistaken. All records, I'm not mistaken, Zarin said. He pointed at the map behind her. That place wasn't a battlefield. It was my planet. And we didn't fight. We didn't resist. We begged. Gasps came from a few seats. Elira's voice grew firmer. I'm sorry, but the official archives, your archives, lie, Zarin said. Elira stiffened. Zarin looked around the room. You all think Earth brought peace. You think they saved the galaxy? But to my people, they brought fire. They brought silence. They didn't land to talk. They came to destroy. The room was frozen. Zarin's voice shook now. His memories were rising like smoke. I saw them land. I saw the soldiers. They didn't ask questions. They didn't speak. They burned everything. And my home, my school, my family. A girl from a watery species raised her hand slowly. Is this true? Zian nodded. They told the galaxy we were rebels. They told the universe we were violent. But we were farmers, poets. We didn't even have a military. Another student, a large reptilian one, frowned. Then why attack? Zirin met his eyes. Because we said no. Earth gave us a choice, Join. Them or disappear. Illyra looked uncomfortable now. She glanced at her tablet. Zarin, these are serious claims, but I must follow the records. We teach history as it is. Zarin stepped closer to the front. Then your history's broken. That room held its breath. Illyra's hands trembled slightly. She had never been challenged like this. Not in this way. Ziron's voice dropped low. You call it a great victory, but I call it the day my planet burned. For a moment no one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the floating lights above. Then, from the back of the room, someone whispered, Maybe we've been learning lies. Illyra turned quickly, but she couldn't tell who said it. Zirin stood tall. His eyes were wet, but his voice was strong. If this academy wants truth, then stop calling it the Battle of Iran 7, he said. Calling it what it really was, a massacre. Illyra said nothing. She didn't stop him. Zirin turned and walked out of the room. Behind him, students sat in silence. The lecture was over, but something had begun. Something the academy had never expected. Zirin walked out of the classroom. His hands were still shaking. His chest felt tight, like someone had dropped a heavy stone on it. The hallway outside was quiet. Smooth white walls, floating lights, a peaceful place, too peaceful. It didn't match the storm inside him. For 10 years, he had stayed silent. He had listened as humans taught their version of history. He had sat in rooms filled with pride and lies. He had forced himself to forget. But now, it was all coming back. Zarin stopped in the hallway and leaned against the wall. He closed his eyes, and the past swallowed him whole. He was 9 years old the day the sky changed, that morning. He had woken up to sunlight coming through his window. His mother had already gone to the fields. His sister Mira was still asleep, wrapped in a green blanket. Zarin remembered touching her, hair gently. The wind outside was warm, birds were singing. It was a normal day until it wasn't. A deep sound filled the sky, not thunder. Got engines. So Zane ran outside. Now the villagers were looking up. Ships were falling from the sky. Huge, black, metallic, not like anything they'd ever seen. He remembered his father shouting, "Get inside." But it was too late. The first beam of light came down bright, hot, and fast. It hit the trees near the village edge. The ground shook. A wave of fire rushed across the field. Zarin had never seen anything burn that fast. People screamed. He saw a neighbor, Livo, trying to carry 2 children. But the fire caught them first. Zion ran. He heard more beams fall. Buildings exploded. Smoke rose. Back in the present. Zarin opened his eyes. He was still in the hallway. His skin felt cold now. His mind was spinning. Why did they call it a battle? It was no army, no warships, no shields. Just people. People who wanted peace. He sat on the bench beside the wall. Holoscreen was showing news. Galactic Peace Day parade on Earth begins tomorrow. He stared at it. Peace. His planet never got peace. They got ash. Later that day, Zirin returned to his small dorm room. It was quiet and dim. He sat on his bed and opened the one item he had kept hidden for years. A small silver cube. It was old, dented, and had one cracked corner. He pressed the side. A soft light blinked. The hologram began. His father's voice spoke first, for Mira and Zirin. If you're hearing this, we didn't make it. Zarin's throat tightened. The image showed his parents, standing in front of their home. His mother was holding his sister's favorite toy. His father looked tired but strong. Earth has landed troops. We tried to send messages. No one answers. They say we're rebels, but we've never even held weapons. If this recording survives, let it be proof we didn't fight. We only wanted to be left alone. The hologram faded. Cern sat in the dark. Tears slid down his face. That message was never played in court, never shown to any council. Earth made sure of that. They had erased the truth. The next day, Zern returned to class. He didn't know why. Maybe part of him wanted to see. The professor had changed the lesson. Maybe part of him wanted to fight back. He entered the room. Everyone stared. Some whispered. Lyra stood at the front, stiff and silent. She didn't start the lecture. Not right away, then, without a word. She pressed her tablet. The screen came alive again. Aeron 7's map reappeared. But this time, she paused. I reviewed the records again, she said slowly. Zurin watched her closely. There is no mention of civilian centers, no mention of cultural sites. Just targets and numbers. It doesn't feel complete. Zarin said nothing. Alira looked at him. You said you were there. You say we got it wrong. If you're willing, share what you remember. The class turned toward him. Zarin stood up. He didn't look nervous now. His voice was clear. You want to know what I remember? He asked. I remember the way the sky turned orange. I remember holding my sister while the ground shook under us. I remember my father carrying us into the forest, thinking the trees would protect us. They didn't. He looked at the others. Earth says we resisted. But all we did was survive. They didn't drop food. They didn't speak to us. They dropped fire. Thin alien girl raised her hand. But why? Why would Earth do that? Zarin answered. Because we said no. We didn't want to join their alliance. We didn't want their laws. We had our own ways. That was enough to mark us as dangerous. Silenced. Another student, a lizard-like creature with glowing eyes, asked, How did you escape? Zarin closed his eyes for a second. There was a cave. My father found it. He told me and Mira to run. We did. Stayed behind. When we came out the next day, there was nothing left. The professor whispered, Nothing. Only ash. After class, the students didn't leave right away. They stood in small groups, whispering. Some looked angry, some looked scared, and some looked ashamed. Cernum walked out again, just like before, but this time, someone followed him. It was Professor Lyr. She stopped him in the hallway. No, I didn't know, she said softly. You weren't meant to, Zarin replied. She looked troubled. I've taught that battle for years. I believed the records, thought we were bringing peace. Xian turned to face her. If you really want peace, then tell the truth. She didn't answer. Not yet. That night, Zarin watched the stars outside his window. They looked the same as they did when he was a boy. He wondered how many other planets had. Stories like his stories buried, erased, rewritten. He wondered how many students in that classroom were survivors too. And he wondered, maybe, just maybe, the truth was starting to rise again. Like fire from cold ash. The next lecture was different. There was tension in the air. It felt like the room itself was holding its breath. Students whispered as they entered. Some looked at Zarin with respect. Others looked nervous. A few avoided him completely. The events of the last class had spread across the academy like wildfire. Zarin Val, survivor of Aeron 7, had spoken. He had told a story no one had ever heard, a story that wasn't in any book, a story Earth had never allowed to exist. Professor Alira stood, at the front again, but this time her voice was slower, less confident. We are continuing our study of Aeron 7, she said. But today, Mr. Zarin Val will speak. His experience challenges the official version. No one moved. No one spoke. All eyes turned. To Zer. He stood up, walked to the front, and faced the class. He didn't bring notes, didn't need them, because he had lived it. I was 9 when they came, he began. No hollow screen. No map, just his voice. My people didn't know what was happening. One moment we were picking fruit. The next fire was falling from the sky. He looked around the room. My planet didn't have weapons, not even soldiers. We had temples, farms, schools. We had stories, songs, a way of life. Zarin paused. He took a breath. Earth called us dangerous because we refused to join their alliance. They said we could live under their rule, or not live at all. One student, a red-scaled being, raised a hand slowly. But, Earth, said your people attacked first. That you fired on one of their scout ships. Zarin's jaw tightened. He nodded. That's what they told you. He reached into his jacket, pulled out the small silver cube. My father built this recorder. He sent a message the night before the attack. He said we were peaceful. We asked to talk, to delay, to understand. He held up the cube. but they never answered. The cube flickered on. His father's voice played across the room once more. If anyone hears this, we are not a threat. We are not fighters. Earth demands submission. We only ask for time. For peace. The voice faded. No one spoke. Not even Liren looked straight at her. Did your files include that message? She shook her head slowly. No, he turned to the class. Then maybe the archives are broken. It's a young human student raised his hand. His voice was quiet. My grandfather fought in the expansion wars, he said. He always told me Earth brought peace by ending chaos. Are you saying they lied to us? Zirin didn't answer right away. He looked at the student with tired eyes. I'm saying peace built on ashes is not peace, he said. It's silence, and silence hides the screams. The student lowered his hand. The room grew heavier. Then one of the alien students in the front row stood up. Her skin was soft blue. Her voice shook. My home was never attacked. But my mother told me of another planet. It's burned without warning. She said humans did it too. Zian nodded. You're not the only one, she said quietly. The others turned to her. Then another voice spoke. Then another whispers. Came names, planets, dates, stories, half-remembered warnings, lost colonies. Buried History. Elira watched them all, for the first time in her life. She didn't know what to say. She had always trusted the archives, always believed Earth's record was the truth. But now, she wasn't sure. Why would they hide this? She asked out loud. Zere answered softly, because truth is heavy, and they wanted to fly. Later that day, after the class ended, Elira sat alone in her office. She played the old files again, the battle reports, the victory speeches, the celebration clips. They all felt hollow. Now she searched the database, but most files about Iran 7 were either missing or sealed under Level 9 clearance. Military level, off-limits. Even to her, she tried again, still blocked. She leaned back, troubled. If Zaren's story was true, and her heart said it was, then how many other stories had been erased? How much of history had been rewritten? And more importantly, what did Earth fear so much that they had to bury it? That night, Zaren walked the gardens near the Academy's core. He sat beside the water pool. The stars above looked the same as they did 10 years ago. But something inside him had changed. He had spoken. He had told the truth. And the truth had landed like fire. Now, he wasn't alone anymore. Others were beginning to remember. To speak. To question. He looked at the cube in his hand. His father's last words. A voice the galaxy was never meant to hear. Zaren whispered, they tried to burn us into silence.
8.
But we survived. And now?
Loudly.
The silence was breaking. Professor Elira Voss sat alone in her office. It was past midnight. The campus was quiet. Most students were asleep. But Elira couldn't rest. Not after Zaren's story. Not after the things the students said. Too many questions now filled her mind. Too many voices her records did not explain. She stared at her screen. The battle logs. The maps. The Earth military reports. Everything she had taught for years. But now, it all felt wrong. She pulled up the official Earth archive again. Battle of Iran 7. The same files appeared. Operation approved. Earth Military Command objective. Neutralize hostile force outcome. Strategic victory, civilian casualties. Minimal, that word minimal burned in her eyes. Zaren had described entire cities lost, entire cultures wiped away. She clicked deeper into the report. Images appeared, soldiers landing, buildings burning, but the footage was clean. Too clean. No civilians, no screams. Just soldiers and flags. Something was missing. Elira leaned forward and opened a deeper search. She tried to access the classified files. Access denied. She tried again. Access denied. Her credentials as a professor weren't enough. She frowned. Why are teaching records locked? She searched again, this time for personal accounts or survivor reports. Nothing, not one voice from Aaron-7, not one interview, not one statement, just silence, a whole planet. And no one had anything to say. That wasn't a mistake. That was erasure. She opened a new search string. This time she looked for hidden file paths, old backups, archived versions, and there deep in the system she found some forgotten folder, unlabeled. She clicked it. A video began to load. It was low quality. Static crackled through it. A appeared in the corner. Earth year 2137. Then came a voice. Harsh, military operation, silence. Total burn protocol authorized. Begin orbital cleansing. Lyra froze. No survivors, no transmissions, no ruins left standing. The image showed a human commander, a woman in black armor with a cold face. She stood in front of a fleet screen. Let the galaxy think this was a battle. History remembers winners. Burn everything. The screen went black. Illyra's hands trembled. She had just found a war, crime hidden in plain sight. She copied the file. But as soon as she tried to download it, her screen flashed red. Unauthorized transfer attempt logged to Earth SECURITUI. She backed away from the terminal. Her heart pounded. They had seen it. They would know. The next morning, Lyra returned to class as usual. But something had changed. Two human officials in black uniforms stood outside her door. They didn't speak, just watched. Inside the classroom, students sat quietly. Zurin entered last. He saw the men outside. He met Illyra's eyes. She gave a small nod. Yes, she knew now. Yes, she believed him. She stepped forward and addressed the class. I reviewed the records. I searched beyond the official files. She paused. I found something disturbing. Something Earth never meant to be seen. A few students leaned in. She looked at Zurin, and then said it out loud. Aaron-7 was not a battle. It was a burn order. Gasps spread through the room. She told them about the secret file, the command to destroy. Everything, the plan to erase all traces of life. They didn't want victory. They wanted silence. One student asked, why would they do that? Illyra answered, because Aaron-7 said no. And Earth wanted to make an example. Zurin stood up. They didn't just destroy buildings. They destroyed a people, my people. He held up the silver cube. This recording. It's one of the last voices from my home. You were never meant to hear it. Placed it on the table. I want you to hear it anyway. The classroom was silent as the recording played again. Zurin's father, his mother, their message of peace, their hope that someone would. Listen. The message ended. No one spoke, until one alien student whispered, "We've been learning lies," another said. If they erased one planet, how many others? The class started to murmur. A wave was rising, not of anger yet, but of awareness, of truth. After the lecture, the two Earth officials followed Illyra down the hall. One of them spoke coldly. "Professor Voss, we need to speak to you." She stopped. "About the file." He nodded. It was restricted for a reason. She didn't back down. The truth should never be restricted. The other officer stepped forward. "You're warned. Do not show it again." Illyra held her ground. Or what? They said nothing. But their silence said everything. That night, Illyra sat in her room, thinking she had broken no law. She had only taught the truth. But Earth didn't want truth. They wanted control. She looked out the window at the stars. She whispered, "How many other stories have we buried beneath? Our pride?" In another part of the campus, Zurin stood alone in the dark garden. He looked up at the same stars and whispered, "Let them try to silence us again." Professor Illyra Voss didn't sleep that night. The secret video played over and over in her mind. No survivors. No transmissions. Burn everything. That wasn't war. It was something darker. And it had been hidden from the galaxy for over 10 years. She couldn't forget the look in Zurin's eyes. Now she knew he hadn't been exaggerating. He had lived through a full planetary burn, not as a soldier, not as a rebel, but as a child. The next morning, Illyra walked into her lecture hall without fear. She had made a decision. No more silence, no more pretending. The room filled quickly. Students were buzzing. Rumors had already spread that Earth was watching the class, that someone was trying to shut it down. Two black-suited Earth officials stood at the back again, cold eyes. No smiles. Alira ignored them. She stepped forward, turned on the main screen, and looked at the class. Today she said clearly, we won't study tactics. We won't study maps. Today, I show you what Earth did to the sky. She pressed play. The screen flickered to life. The secret video began. A warship camera feed. Commander Juno's face filled the room, cold, calm, unshaken. She spoke. Initiate protocol. Skyfire. The view shifted. Dozens of Earth ships hovered in orbit above. You're on -7, the command was given, and then they fired. Beams of light, missiles, plasma strikes, one after another. They hit the planet below. Not just military targets, not factories, not weapons. They hit forests, temples, towns. Zeren, sitting near the front, watched in silence. His hands trembled, but he didn't cry. He had no more tears for this. The class watched as buildings were turned to dust, as rivers boiled, as huge clouds of ash swallowed the green lands. In the video, someone asked Commander Juno, "What if there are still civilians down there?" She answered, "There are no civilians, just obstacles." A student in the front row gasped, "This is genocide." Another whispered, "Why was this hidden?" Alira turned toward the class, because truth is dangerous to those who build. Power on lies. The two Earth officials stepped forward now. "Turn it off," one said. Alira ignored them. "This is history," she replied, "and history must be seen." The screen kept playing. The ships fired again and again. The sky turned red. One student, a young human, stood up. He looked pale, angry. "My family. We told stories about this battle with pride, but this isn't honor." Zeren finally spoke. "This is what I saw as a child," he said softly. "This is what woke me at night, every night for 10 years. Now you've seen it too." Another student asked, "Why didn't Earth stop after the first strike?" Lyra answered, "Because they wanted the world to disappear. No voice, no memory, just ashes." The video ended. Silence filled the room. Not a peaceful silence, but a heavy one. A silence full of pain and questions. The two Earth officials moved closer. "This footage is illegal," one said. "You are under warning." But Alira didn't. "Back down, then warn me. But I won't teach lies anymore." After class, students gathered in groups. They didn't talk about tactics. They didn't talk about Earth's greatness. They talked about truth, about loss, about what else might be hidden, and for the first time, many of them looked at Earth not as a leader, as a destroyer. Zeren stood outside the lecture hall. Several students came to him. One from a desert world said, "My people have a tale of fire from the sky. We thought it was myth. Maybe it wasn't." Another student asked, "What will they do to stop this story now?" Zahn didn't smile. He only said, "They can't stop what's already begun." Later that night, Alira received a message from Earth's Education Authority. Subject: Termination warning. You're to cease further unauthorized teaching or face removal from your position. She stared at the message, then deleted it in the dark garden again. Zin stood alone. He looked up at the stars. Once they had filled him with fear. Now they filled him with fire. He held the silver cube again, pressed play. His father's voice spoke through the night. "If this message survives, let the galaxy know we only wanted peace." Zeren looked toward the Academy Tower, toward the light, and whispered, "Now they will." The next day, the Academy felt different. Whispers filled every hallway. Holoscreens buzzed with quiet alerts. Students spoke in low voices, watching over their shoulders. Something had changed. The video professor, Alira, showed the secret truth. About Iran 7 was spreading fast. It wasn't just in one classroom anymore. Now, it was being shared on private links, across dorms, even off-world. Some called it fake. Others called it the first real truth about Earth's rise, and many were asking the same question: how much has been hidden? Inside the lecture hall, Professor Alira stood tall. No more fear, no more silence. She looked at her students and said, "Today's topic is not a battle, it is a question. One you must all answer." She paused. When the burning started, where were you? Zarin sat in the front row. He watched his classmates. Some avoided his eyes, some nodded slowly, some looked afraid. A student raised her hand. She was from the Venari, soft-voiced species known for memory keeping. "Worked at the Intergalactic Council," she said. "He once told me, sometimes you win peace, not by truth, but by silence." She looked down. I didn't understand what he meant, till now. Another student stood up. A tall boy from a wealthy human colony. "My father is a senator on Earth. He said he taught me we brought order to chaos, that every burned world was necessary." He hesitated, but last night, I watched the full Aaron 7 video alone. He looked shaken. There were children running, statues crushed. It didn't feel like order. It felt like murder. Whisper ran through the room, then another student stood up, a thin creature from a frozen world. "My people heard the screams of Iran 7 across the stars. We asked Earth what happened. They said the planet was full of traitors." He looked at Zarin. "We believed them." His voice trembled. "And we said nothing." More stood, more spoke. Different planets, different stories, but all had one thing in common. They knew something had been wrong. They had stayed silent. Professor Alira let them speak. Let the silence stretch. Then she asked if the galaxy knew. "Why didn't anyone act?" Zarin answered. "Because Earth was strong, and no one wanted to challenge strength." He stood. "But silence is not peace." He looked around. "You watched. You believed their words. You repeated them. But now, you know." His voice was sharp but calm, and once you know, you can't pretend anymore. At that moment, the classroom door opened. 4 more Earth officials entered, serious, armed. One of them held up a device. "This lecture is over." Alira stepped forward. "No, it has just begun." The official's tone was firm. "You were under arrest for spreading classified military material." Gasps spread through the students. Zarin moved toward the front. "So you'll silence her too? Just like my world?" Another officer stepped forward. "You're not authorized to speak." Zarin didn't back down. "We are all authorized to speak. You just never wanted us to." Then something happened that no one expected. The students stood up, one by one. Silently, they blocked the doors. They closed the windows. One Venari student pressed a lock code on the wall. The room sealed shut. The officer shouted, "Open this door. You're breaking law. This is a threat to Earth." But the students said nothing. They simply stared back, together, standing with Alira, standing with. Lara looked around, her voice calm but steady. "Maybe you can punish one teacher, but you can't stop all of them." Izen added, "Truth has already escaped. You can't burn every star." The officers made one last call, but the signal didn't go through. A tall lizard-like student had jammed the signal using a small device. He grinned. "We're not just listeners now. We're witnesses." Outside the classroom, others were starting to gather. More students, more faculty. They had heard what happened, and now they wanted to see for themselves. The silence had broken, and the galaxy was beginning to listen. The classroom was locked. Earth's officers stood, frozen, trapped, surrounded not by violence, but by silence. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of unity. The students had sealed the doors. The windows were blocked, and no orders could get out. Inside, students stood with Professor Alira and Surin together, stronger than Earth. Expected Surin stepped forward. He looked at the officers in black. "You tried to erase my people," he said. "Now you want to erase the truth?" His voice was calmed, full of fire. "But we are still here. I am still here." One of the officers growled, "You think this changes anything? Earth still controls the systems, the governments, the news. One message won't stop that." Zurin looked at the students around him. He smiled. It already has. Professor Alira walked to the front of the room. She placed her palm on the teaching console. The screen lit up. She activated the hidden files again. The war logs, the erased. Commands the full destruction of Iran-7 and something new. Series of classified documents she had unlocked late last night, buried evidence, suppressed reports, messages from Earth, generals saying, complete sterilization authorized. Wipe them before they spread the truth. History belongs to the victors. She turned to the students. This is not just about Iran-7, she said. It's about every truth Earth buried. Every culture destroyed. Every voice silenced in the name of control. The screen blinked again. Now, it showed a live broadcast. Zarin had connected it through the student network. It wasn't just this room watching anymore now. The entire galaxy was listening. The officers rushed forward to stop it, but the students stood in their way. No more silence, said no more lies. Another added. Zarin stepped in front of the camera. My name is Zarin Val, he said. I was 9 years old when Earth destroyed my planet. He held up the silver cube. This is the last voice from my family, my people. Our truth was buried. He stared straight into the lens. But truth doesn't die. It waits. And now, it burns through stone. He pressed play. The recording echoed across every screen connected to the broadcast. Zarin's father spoke. We are not rebels. We are not enemies. We only ask for peace. If you hear this, remember us. Let them know we lived. The students watched in silence. Many wept. Some stood tall with pride, even the Earth.
The officers lowered their heads.
Then Alira took the mic. She looked into the camera. I was once proud to teach Earth's version of peace, she said, but now I choose truth over comfort. She raised her voice. To every species watching every world Earth told to obey or burn, your stories matter, and they will no longer be hidden. Outside the university's public square was full. Thousands of students stood shoulder to shoulder, watching the broadcast. More screens turned on. More people joined. Some from nearby stations, others from far worlds. Even some humans watched with open eyes, heavy hearts. For the first time in decades. The truth of Iran-7 was free. Later that night, Zarin stood alone on the rooftop. The stars above were bright. A wind passed through the air. Professor Alira stepped beside him. They'll come for us, she said. Zarin nodded. Let them. Looked at him. They'll try to bury this again. He turned to her. Then we'll burn through the stone again. In a small dark room, far across the stars, an old woman watched the broadcast. She was once a soldier. She had once followed the burn order now. Her hand shook. She whispered to herself, we were wrong. Across the galaxy, others whispered too, and soon they began to speak louder. The galaxy had changed. Not all at once, not with fire, but with truth. Zarin's voice had reached billions. His father's words echoed across systems where silence once ruled. Professor Alira's lesson was no longer a quiet rebellion. It had become a spark, and that spark had caught fire. Earth's leaders were furious. They sent more ships. They shut down networks. They called Zaina a terrorist, Alira a traitor. They warned of dangerous lies spreading across the stars. But the galaxy no longer believed them. Not all, not blindly on the university world. Thousands of students formed a human wall. They stood outside the campus gates. It's arm-in-arm, no weapons, no violence, just their bodies, and the truth. Zarin stood at the front. He didn't speak this time. He just held the silver. Cube let it play again and again. His father's voice. His family's final words. The truth of Iran-7 inside government halls. Some humans began to question. Some resigned. Some leaked more files. Some apologized. The Earth Council tried to keep order, but order built on silence was now crumbling. In deep space, On forgotten worlds, people began to speak. I remember the fire. My people vanished too. They said we were dangerous. But we were only different. Across the stars, the buried dead began to rise, not embody. But in memory, Zern received thousands of messages. Some were angry, some were full of tears. But many said the same thing. We remember now. In a council meeting broadcast across the galactic net, a young Venari ambassador stood and asked, "Will Earth continue to teach history as victory? Or will it finally teach it with truth?" There was no answer. Only silence. This time, not from fear, but because no lie could stand anymore. Professor Alira was removed from the academy, but she wasn't forgotten. She opened a new school in neutral ground, no flags, no anthem, only one rule: teach the truth, even when it burns. Zarin didn't become a warrior. He didn't want revenge. He didn't need to burn Earth back. He had done something greater. He had made the galaxy. Remember? On the anniversary of the burning of Iron 7, billions paused. Across screens, across worlds, not to celebrate, not to cheer, but to listen. One recording played on every frequency. His father's voice. If you hear this, remember us. Let them know we lived. Xian stood on a quiet hill. He had returned to what was left of his world. Ashes, stone. But the sky above was filled with lights, ships watching from orbit, not to destroy, but to honor. He knelt in the dirt, placing the silver cube into the ground. Then he whispered, "I remembered, Father, and now they do too." Above him, in orbit, a message flashed across thousands of ships: never again forgotten, never again silent. Galaxy did not forget, because one boy remembered, and the universe listened.